This week we're looking at number 3 in the series on Ezra and Nehemiah. This one's entitled God's Call. And as you look through the biblical material, Ezra 7, Nehemiah 1 and so on, you'll discover there is no call. At least not an explicit one, not one that is definitive. And that, I think, is perhaps a very important point for us to begin with, thinking about the fact that there is no explicit call for them, or sometimes for us. Times we wait around thinking, well, we have to have an explicit call of what God wants us to do right here and now, when we have already a general call, as did Ezra and Nehemiah. Their general call was to go back to Jerusalem after the 70 years in Babylon were complete. So they just picked up that task and went and fulfilled it. Maybe we should be doing exactly the same thing. We have a general call to go out and make disciples in all nations, teaching them about Jesus, making them disciples of Jesus. That call is for all Christians. Why do we need something absolutely specific at that point when we already know what we are supposed to be doing? The other thing I think we need to notice here is that they took this very seriously. Both Ezra and Nehemiah were very good Bible students, and they knew what had to happen. And they didn't wait around for somebody else to take that responsibility. They said to themselves, well, we need to do this. We need to go out. We need to go, and since we have that responsibility of serving the king in whatever way, we can use that position to advance God's cause. And here you have Nehemiah going before the king, saying, I'm sad because I want to go back and help my people. Can I have time off? Can I have some support? We need to go back and get the temple services working again. We need to have the walls rebuilt. Can you help us to do just that? So I think here we have something that again is very significant for us in our day, taking not only the general call seriously, but the fact that God wants us to go back and restore things. In fact, if you think about it, the big problem was that God's reputation had been tarnished, that all the people around thought that the God of Israel couldn't defend his people. And you had to rebuild that. In the same way as the temple was rebuilt, the walls were rebuilt, God's reputation is rebuilt. And as we go out, are we not also called to give God's reputation a validity, to validate it, to make sure that people understand what God is like, the kind of person he is, in the same way as those leaders did in the past? Also, you have to think about those leaders and what they took on. It was not going to be an easy task. Here's a quote from Alan Redpath in the notes for this time. Let us learn this lesson from Nehemiah. You never lighten the load unless you first have felt the pressure in your own soul. You are never used of God to bring blessing until God has opened your eyes and made you see things as they are. We need to go to God. We need to talk to him, to say, Lord, I recognize your call to me, whether it's general or whether it's explicit. I recognize you have a call on me, to say it another way, to do what is right, to speak well of you wherever I go. And in the questions for this time, maybe we can point this to ourselves. How can we be sure about God's call? I think when it's a general call, as I've said, we can be sure. As to the specifics, you maybe need to ask some more questions, but be sure that God is asking you to do that. What do we learn from Ezra and Nehemiah? Does it seem that God's call is often in line with what we want? Sometimes that does happen, doesn't it? And in what ways did Ezra and Nehemiah advance God's truth? How do we make this relevant today? I would challenge you today to think about how you make God relevant where you are, in your own society, among the people that you know, to help them to understand the truth about God, his salvation, and the fact that he cares for us, he loves us, and leads us on towards his eternal kingdom. May God bless you as you do so.